Okay, so the pier's falling apart. The floors of the ocean were now filled with debris, right? You got broken parts of the pier, broken parts of all the rides, metal, wood, all sticking out of the ocean. So if you're going down there to surf, which people still did, obviously, you were a badass. You know, again, this whole idea about being a rebel, like you were going against culture. Like in Hawaii, when Captain Cook came in, they told people you can't go surfing mainly because of the attire, which meant like you were, shirtless or wearing, very limited clothing, and they thought that was unchristian-like. So if you went out surfing, you had to really want to surf. You had to really want to rebel against, the rules of the day. So people who went out there to surf really had to know what they were doing, and because you can get hurt, you can get killed, and on top of that, if somebody came into this territory to surf and they didn't know the terrain, like they didn't know, like at a certain number of feet into the water, there was going to be a pipe sticking out of the ground, and if they didn't know that, they could not only get hurt, but they could cut into you, and you could get hurt, right? So it became a really surf spots became territorial. It became like kind of like gang territory, and so you would see people spray paint along the walls. This is kind of how a lot of ways graffiti art kind of started to get into surf culture, because they would like write locals only on the walls, because it meant like if you're not from here, do not go in this water because you're gonna get hurt. And if people saw you going in the water, and if you weren't a local, they would be throwing rocks and bottles at you from the pier. So now you're trying to surf in a spot that you're not, obviously, you're not. It's not your spot. It's not your territory. And so now you've got to not only avoid you surf. You got to surf. You got to catch a wave and then try to maneuver the waves. You got to avoid all the debris in the water. Then you got to avoid like rocks and bottles trying to hit you from above. So surfers, hats off if you were surfing in this time. So locals only became like a really big thing in surf culture because of that. It kind of had a gang feeling to it. And I think that's kind of in a lot of ways how a lot of the punk era of music started to come out of that era, like Black Flag and Suicidal Tendencies. Okay, in the 1960s, anybody who wanted to skateboard at the time would have to go to a thrift store, buy a pair of roller skates, take off the clay wheels. They'd go home and grab a cabinet door or drawer door or whatever piece of wood that it was about 3/4 inch thick or a little thicker, and then they go to they get a saw and they basically like carve out their own surfboard shape on their skateboard, on their deck, basically. Sometimes they would even go to the hardware stores and have their friends be as kind of like as lookouts, and they'd run down the aisle, grab a saw, and in the aisle of the hardware store carve out their skate surfboard, and put on their clay wheels, and go get down to the aisle where the screwdrivers were, put on their clay wheels, and boom, DIY sport. So skateboards, initially were very much just homemade. I don't know, vehicles, tools, boards. So and clay wheels, as we were saying, like it's okay if you're in a roller rink because it's a very flat, clean surface. It's no one really gets hurt on a roller rink with clay wheels, so it wasn't that bad. The minute you took clay wheels out to the street, you had sidewalks and pavement, actual asphalt, uneven earth, rocks, pebbles, debris. It was just you had to really want to skateboard if you were willing to withstand the pain of skateboarding to do that. So then in 1972, a revolution happened in skateboarding. A guy named Frank Nasworthy invented the Cadillac wheels, a skateboard wheel made out of polyurethane. This was a softer wheel and thus made you be able to control and maneuver your board. The wheels allowed you to it had more grip, and it had more maneuverability, and you can do more tricks. Watch this.